Welcome back to Global Crypto, the channel where we cut through the noise and bring you the real, unfiltered truth about everything happening in the world of digital assets. I am genuinely fired up today because we have got something absolutely massive to dig into, and I promise you by the time this video is done, your entire perspective on XRP, on Bitcoin, and on the future of crypto is going to be completely different. Today we are breaking down some incredible comments from a man who spent years operating in the shadows for the United States government, a former covert CIA officer, a decorated Air Force combat veteran, and someone who clearly understands how power, money, and governments actually work behind closed doors. His name is Andrew Busamante, and if you have not come across this guy yet, you are seriously sleeping on one of the most intelligent voices talking about this space right now. I watch his content regularly, and when he started opening up about Bitcoin and digital currencies, I knew immediately I had to bring this conversation straight to you guys, here on XRP Global Crypto. Now, before we dive deep into everything he said, I want you to understand why this matters so much. Andrew Busamante is not your average crypto influencer sitting in front of a green screen telling you which coin to ape into this week. This is a man who spent years inside one of the most secretive and powerful intelligence organizations on the entire planet. He understands geopolitics at a level most people will never get access to. He understands how governments think, how they strategize, how they protect their power, and most importantly, how they control the flow of money. So when a man with that kind of background and that kind of experience sits down and starts talking seriously about Bitcoin and decentralized cryptocurrency, you better believe every single word deserves your full attention. And what he had to say was not what the Bitcoin maximalists out there want to hear. Not even a little bit. Busamante made a point that I think is one of the most honest and clear-headed things I've heard said about Bitcoin in a long time. He said that Bitcoin, as a decentralized currency, is only useful if people actually adopt it at scale. And by adoption, he means real adoption. Storefronts accepting it. ATM machines giving you cash for it. Everyday people using it to buy groceries, pay bills, send money to their families. He said that without that kind of widespread practical adoption, Bitcoin is essentially just a speculative asset that you buy, hold, and hope goes up in price. And the brutal truth is, that is exactly what Bitcoin has been for the overwhelming majority of its existence. You cannot walk into most stores with Bitcoin. You cannot pay your rent with Bitcoin easily. You cannot send it instantly without dealing with network congestion and transaction fees that make the whole experience painful and slow. And here is where it gets really interesting, because Busamante then shifted the conversation toward what governments are actually moving toward, and that is centralized digital currencies. He pointed to China and parts of Europe as places where centralized digital currency systems are already alive and functioning in the real world. And he made a point that I think is absolutely critical for every single person watching this channel to understand. No government, anywhere on this planet, is ever going to fully embrace and incentivize a currency that they cannot control. Think about that. Governments need to know how much money is flowing in and out of their economy. They need to control the value of the currency. They need to be able to make revenue off every transaction, even if it is just a fraction of a percent. A centralized digital currency gives them all of that. A fully decentralized cryptocurrency like Bitcoin gives them absolutely none of it. This is the part that I want you to really lock into your brain, because this is where the conversation becomes critical for XRP holders and anyone invested in utility-based crypto assets. Busamante said something incredibly powerful. He said that anything that is totally decentralized and completely outside of government control works against every single incentive that any government has. And because of that, governments will either block it outright or they will simply never incentivize their populations to use it. Now, I know that is going to upset a lot of people. I know the Bitcoin community is passionate and loud, and they have been betting on this technology since the early days. But even Busamante acknowledged that Bitcoin investors have been holding and hoping since the early 2000s. And still, to this day, you cannot really use Bitcoin in any meaningful, practical, everyday way. That reality is impossible to ignore, no matter how much you love the asset. Now, here is where I need to jump in and give you my honest reaction, because there are some things Busamante said that I completely agree with, and there are some nuances that I think are worth exploring further. When he started talking about the scalability problem with Bitcoin, I felt that deeply. The Bitcoin network simply cannot handle the transaction volume that a global financial system would require. We're talking about a network that, under heavy load, can take several minutes or even longer to confirm a single transaction. Now, yes, there is the Lightning Network built on top of Bitcoin that is supposed to solve some of these speed and cost issues. But the honest question is, who is actually using Lightning Network at any meaningful scale right now? The answer is not many people. Certainly not at the level that would be required to replace or even seriously challenge the existing global financial infrastructure. And that brings me to the part of this conversation that made me want to stand up and cheer, because Busamante then pivoted and started talking about the altcoins, and specifically mentioned XRP by name. He talked about assets that have both strategic value and real-world utility, and he specifically called out XRP, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, and a handful of others as the kinds of digital assets that large institutions are actually considering as replacements for the SWIFT cross-border payment system. SWIFT is the system that currently powers most international money transfers between banks, and it is slow, expensive, and frankly outdated for the world we live in today. And when a former CIA officer who understands global financial systems starts naming XRP in the same breath as replacing SWIFT, that is not something you can just scroll past and ignore. What Busamante described about XRP and these utility-based blockchain assets is exactly what we have been talking about on this channel for years. He described an interoperable ledger where value can move seamlessly across the world instantly and for little to no cost. He talked about private ledgers, institutional use cases, and a system that governments and banks can actually get behind because it serves their needs while still modernizing the infrastructure. That is the XRP use case in a nutshell. Ripple has been building exactly that kind of institutional-grade infrastructure. And the fact that someone with a CIA background is recognizing it and calling it out publicly tells you that this technology is being noticed at levels that go way beyond just crypto Twitter and YouTube comment sections. Now, Busamante also raised a fascinating tension that I think is worth spending some time on, because it gets to the heart of why this whole conversation is so complicated and so important. He talked about this weird irony at the center of crypto adoption. The whole point of cryptocurrency when it first appeared was decentralization, cutting out the middleman, letting people send value directly to each other without involving a bank or a financial institution. But what is actually happening now is that the biggest banks in the world, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citibank, they are all scrambling to integrate blockchain technology into their own systems. So the very institutions that crypto was supposed to make obsolete are now the ones driving mainstream adoption of blockchain rails. And that creates this strange situation where crypto wins, but not quite in the way the original cypherpunks and crypto-anarchists ever imagined it would. But here is my take on that tension, and I think this is important. You cannot put crypto back in the box. That ship has sailed. The institutions have seen the numbers. They have done the math. They understand how much money they can save by using stablecoins, bridge assets, and tokenized financial products instead of the slow, expensive legacy systems they currently operate on. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the largest asset management firm on the planet, has publicly stated that the future of financial markets is on the blockchain. Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan, despite his very public skepticism of Bitcoin over the years, has his bank working with somewhere between 80 and 100 different blockchain companies right now. These are not small experiments. These are serious strategic investments in the future of finance. And then we have Eric Trump entering the conversation, and honestly, I was pleasantly surprised by how much this guy actually knows about this space. Eric Trump sat down and made the case for tokenization of everything, and I mean everything. Real estate, music albums, movies, art, commodities, company shares. He envisions a world where any asset of value can be broken down into tokens and made accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world. He used Trump Tower as his example. Instead of going to 7 elite banks to secure $500 million in financing, why not open that opportunity up to tens of millions of regular people around the world who want a small piece of something valuable? That is the democratization of finance in its most powerful form, and it is exactly what blockchain technology makes possible. What Eric Trump described is not science fiction, and it is not some distant future fantasy. The infrastructure for tokenized assets is being built right now, today, by companies operating in the blockchain space. And when you think about what that means for XRP specifically, it means that the need for fast, cheap, reliable cross-border settlement of tokenized value is going to explode in the coming years. Every tokenized real estate deal, every tokenized album, every tokenized commodity is going to need a way to move that value across borders instantly and without enormous fees eating into the transaction. That is precisely the problem that XRP and the XRP ledger were designed to solve, and it is why we remain so bullish on this asset here at XRP Global Crypto. Now let us talk about what is happening right now in terms of institutional adoption, because the news keeps getting better and better. E-Trade, which is owned by Morgan Stanley, has announced plans to offer crypto services and allow customers to custody their own digital assets directly through the platform. Let that sink in for a moment. Morgan Stanley, one of the most prestigious and established financial institutions in the entire world, is opening the door for its customers to hold and trade crypto. This is not Robinhood. This is not some startup fintech app. This is a 150-year-old Wall Street institution saying that digital assets belong in a serious investment portfolio. And this kind of announcement does not happen in a vacuum. It happens because the regulatory environment is shifting, because the Trump administration has made it crystal clear that America wants to be the crypto capital of the world. And because the money is simply too significant to ignore any longer, the risk conversation is real though, and I want to be honest with you about that, because this channel's always going to give it to you straight. Yes, crypto is volatile. Yes, the price of XRP and every other digital asset can swing dramatically in short periods of time. November of last year, Bitcoin was trading at roughly half of what it is valued at now. Busamante pointed that out himself. That kind of volatility is real, and anyone putting money into this space needs to understand the risks before they make any decisions. But here is the thing. Volatility and utility are two completely different conversations. The volatility of crypto as a speculative market does not change the fundamental utility of blockchain infrastructure for moving value across the world efficiently. And as institutional adoption grows and regulatory clarity improves, many analysts believe that volatility will naturally decrease over time as the market matures. So where does all of this leave us? It leaves us at an extraordinary moment in financial history. A former CIA insider is publicly recognizing that utility-based blockchain assets like XRP have a legitimate and powerful future in global finance. The president's own son is out here making the case for tokenization of everything. The world's largest financial institutions are integrating blockchain technology into their operations, whether they like it or not. And the regulatory environment in the United States is more favorable to crypto than it has ever been before. This is not the time to be on the sidelines wondering whether this is real. This is the time to be educated, to be informed, to understand what is happening and why it matters. That is what we do here every single day at XRP Global Crypto, and I'm so grateful that you guys are here with us on this journey. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one. Let's go. Sonnet 4.6.